Sago, Big House here. Well, I hope you haven't got tired of hearing about Son Aguade. He was my mentor when I was growing up, and I was severely addicted to alcohol at the time. He was the only shining light that lit the spark inside of me to be more than just a drunken Indian on the reservation. So, a little story about Uncle Pete. He was an iron worker in his day. This is not him, but it's just Mohawk Indian iron workers in New York City, walking the high steel. But Uncle Pete always had the weirdest sayings. I covered some of them with you before. One of them that always struck me was, of course, is who to trust. Your job out here is to learn who to trust and who to listen to. But he also told me that some of the sayings were full of beans, like the early bird gets the worm. And he would say, well, if you think about it, doesn't the early worm get the bird? So everything came down to exactly how you looked at it. Uncle Pete, or Son Aguade, which means does everything with his left hand, he was severely left-handed, but he was an iron worker, always wore a silver aluminum hat, and always whistled. He had a shack in the swamp, and the shack in the swamp is where he lived when he wasn't working on the farm as a hired hand. I used to love to go to his house in the swamp. There was about 6 inches of snow one day, and it was the first time I'd ever seen the shack in the swamp. We walked up to the shack, and it's just a tin shack out there, not much to it, but it had a great big railroad brass padlock on the front door. I mean, huge. I was just a little kid, so this padlock looked to be about 2 foot tall, but it was a brass padlock like you'd find on the railroad. Well, we went up to the door, and I said, do you have a key? And he said, no, I've never had a key for that lock. And he walked around behind the shed, the tin shed. I followed him around, and as I follow him around, I realized that there's only 3 walls to the shed. The front wall with a padlock on it, and then 2 side walls, and the back was completely open. And I said, Son Aguade, there's no back on your shed. And he said, Guggy, the man has to be in touch with Mother Nature. You have to be aware of the outdoors at all times. And he loved outdoors. And it was still 6 inches of fresh snow. And I looked up, and there's no ceiling on the shed either. There's a potbelly stove in there and a bed with a little tiny tarp over the top to keep the snow off. And he said, you have to be in touch with Father Sky. So I said, wait a minute. If you've only got 3 sides and no roof, why on earth do you have that big brass padlock on the front door? Uncle Pete stopped whistling and kind of laughed and said, Guggy, that brass padlock on the front door is there and it's locked. That's to fool the stupid criminals. And to this day, he's absolutely right. He is the one that saved me from alcoholism and drugs by telling me inside of each of us, the Creator has given us a gift. And that gift is a spark of life. And all you have to do is find out what that gift is and what that spark is and use that for your guidance. So I do hope to meet Son Aguade someday up in the next plane, and I hope he's proud of me for surviving and defeating the demons within. And that's your job too. Take control and defeat the demons from within and be yourself. Find out what your gift is from the great Creator and use it. Because Son Aguade always told me, if you find out what your gift is and you make a living at it, you never have to go to work a day in your life.